These are very, very, very unsure times for a company, Isaac.
Hmm. What are you seeing happening in the market right now as a result of the tariffs?
Companies have two significant issues, one immediate and one long range. The immediate issue is what to do with the goods that are coming in that are going to increase their cost. What should they do with their customers? If, in the example of the coffee cups, will they in fact sell 1,000 cups? If they go back to their customers and ask for a price increase, will the customers say no? The immediate problem is also that the additional money that they have to outlay when the goods arrive at the port. The long term situation is if a company's been in business many years and their standard customary order has been for 1,000 coffee cups, what should they do in the future? Should they order 500, 1,000? What will the price be? This uncertainty causes companies to retract and have great difficulty in planning for the future.
We've talked a number of times off camera where you've broken down for me how cash flow is the lifeblood of a business. You follow the cash, you see what kind of health the business is in and how it operates. What is this doing for cash flow right now?
Immediately, if a company takes the goods that are coming in from offshore, the tariffs have to be paid at that time or the goods will not be released. So there's an immediate drain on cash flow. And the difficulty is, will the company get back that money from sales to customers? That is a very difficult question to answer because the price increases are so negative to both the company and their customer. It allows the customer to say, no, I don't want to receive the goods and I'm not paying for them. Yet the company has already advanced and paid for the duty, the tariffs, and all other costs to receive the goods.
Do you see this impacting, I want to say, parallel industries like the banking industry or like getting a loan? How does this impact people who normally have additional revenue streams or sources whenever they're needing to solve a cash problem?
Well, Isaac, would you make a loan to a company that doesn't know what their revenue is going to be like?
Negative.
No, I wouldn't. And banks have to protect themselves in this case. So with the tariffs, they might ask a company to supply them with updated financial information, maybe a projection of future sales, maybe a cash flow, a 13-week cash flow that would allow the bank to see their position on getting paid back on a loan. And a new loan, I don't think banks will be giving those out anytime soon like they did in the past. I think banks will wait to see the effects of the tariffs on companies and then take a position thereafter.
Follow up question to that, which we already did a conversation about MCA loans, and I'll link that down in the bottom of the show notes for this when it comes out. But MCA loans, do you see more people going that route right now?
If they don't know the adverse effects of an MCA, I would say most definitely. So let's take an example where a company needs money for payroll, as we discussed previously. Where are they going to go? Let's say they go to their conventional lender, a bank, and they say, hey, I've used up all my line of credit. Can I get an extension? I don't think the bank will say yes without an immense amount of paperwork to validate that the loan could be paid back. If the company is in a dire situation, they will take an MCA loan.
And again, to anyone who's listening and confused at the concern in my voice over that topic, Neil did a great breakdown for us on MCA, and then you can go watch that because I don't want to take the whole time recapping everything he said, but give me some hope. Tell me about the future. Is there any end that we see to the tariff issue turning around or ending, or are we going to be dealing with this for a while?
We have to be dealing with this for a while because reports about new shipments coming into the port in LA where there was zero boats.
Wow.
So even if the tariffs end tomorrow, they will be weeks and months before product will be manufactured, completed, put on a boat, and received in the US. So the company should be prepared for shortages and immense upheaval in their cash flow. What they can do immediately is start that 13-week cash flow and live with it every day to see the changes that are taking place because cash is king. It's always been king. In certain times like these, cash is the most important thing a company can protect. So it may have to do layoffs. It may have to slow down on any advance. It may have to slow down on any new projects. In the turnaround world, which I've been in for many, many years, there's one word that describes what companies should do, and that word is no. Anytime somebody asks to spend money, the answer is no. There should be significant and overwhelming evidence for the company to reverse the no to a yes.
That's really good advice. I actually just wrote down 13-week cash flow. We need to make that a video later too.
Oh, yes. In fact, what I do when I run companies is I have a 13-week cash flow, but I also have a weekly cash flow, Monday to Friday. It begins with how much cash I have in the bank, how much I'm expecting in, and what my cash requirements are for the week. And as we discussed in previous episodes, if a company is expecting money in and it isn't received on the day intended, all a company has to do is look down to the bottom of the schedule, the 13-week cash flow, and see who among those creditors is not getting paid. And I would highly recommend that as payments get late, the company doesn't hide, but calls the creditor and says, hey, I'm running slow. I will pay you very soon. I cannot tell you the advantages of doing that because they are so great and I can't explain it. I've done it my whole career, and creditors are very, very, very appreciative of that phone call.
Let me play devil's advocate to that just for a second. Let's say that I am a business who I'm in over my head as far as the debt that I have, be it MCA or something else, and the cash flow just isn't there. What are the chances that I'm going to lose my business, be it in a tariff world or just over leveraged kind of position?
It's hard to say because I've dealt with over 110 different companies, and each situation is different. But so let me generalize.
Sure.
Companies make mistakes, and here's an example of one that they probably wouldn't think about being negative, and it deals with making small payments. So they owe a creditor $10,000 and they can't pay the $10,000. So they send 500 or 750. And they think this will alleviate the pressure on the company and make the creditor happy. But it doesn't work that way. Because if you figure out they do this 10 times, they've given out $5,000. That $5,000 could have gone to one creditor and made them happy. Also, the creditor who's owed 10,000 and receives 500 could look at it and say, okay, I got 500. Now they still owe 9,500. That wasn't a market improvement on my position. So companies should look at payments and decide which of their vendors or creditors fall into an A category. An A category is described as essential to the company's future. So what they should do is take their vendors and break them down into categories A, B, and C. A crucial to the company. Without them, the company cannot continue. B, vendors and creditors that are important to the company, but not to the same extent as the A group. And C, well, I'm sorry to say, but the company will survive without this group. And when it comes to the 13-week cash flow, break down the creditors into these three groups. When money is available, pay A first, B second, C third. Now, before you ask the question, I'll ask it for you. Well, what happens if I don't pay and people sue? I knew you were going to ask that. Well, only because it happens. This is life in business. So think about it from the perspective that the company, if it paid all of C and not A, the company's out of business. That's the perspective to follow. So I'd rather deal with a potential lawsuit and deal with it later, but understand and be comfortable that the company will continue. Now, how do we deal with B's and C's? Because I don't want to leave an open item of what to do and just allow and just say that it's okay to be sued. Well, let's come back to those small payments. If a company were to make small payments, it doesn't necessarily satisfy a creditor or vendor. So if a company makes fewer small payments, they'll have enough cash to pay one creditor or one vendor more money. So when the creditor vendor starts to make noise about getting paid or a lawsuit begins, then the company can take $4,000, $5,000, make a payment, and that will hold off the creditor for at least 60 days, in my opinion. And you play the game of almost leapfrog. I'm not paying vendor A in 1 month. I'll pay them in month 3 and 5 and 7. I'll pay B 2, 4, and 6. It works, I promise.
This almost sounds like corporate Dave Ramsey, where it's that snowball effect that he likes to talk about, where splitting it up to where then you refocus where the cash goes and you make a lot of people or a lot of debt disappear.
Exactly. You know, in the turnaround world, it's survival. And I will give a tremendous amount of credit to anybody who's in business. I've witnessed many, many, many instances of pure survival by these business owners. They can do it. They're smart. They just need a little guidance and some support. Support not only in giving them confidence that they're doing the right thing, but helping them through the process, say, of creating a 13-week cash flow or dealing with an honorary creditor with phone calls and communication. Once they know how to do this, they'll survive.
So let me give you some pushback, because I think the practicality of your solution is there, but someone's going to find this conversation and they're going to be at their wit's end, or they're actually going to be so far behind where they don't see where the cash flow could make sense, whether it's really there or not. What options are left to save a company in that kind of situation?
Isaac, this is mostly what I do. And we begin with the two major options: an out-of-court restructuring and an in-court restructuring. People know it as a bankruptcy. A bankruptcy should be the last option, because you can try an out-of-court settlement first and be prepared, if it doesn't work, to file bankruptcy. But you can't do it the other way. Once you file bankruptcy, bankruptcy is your only method going forward. So begin with out-of-court restructuring.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many, many professionals called chief restructuring officers, CROs, that can help. And what is entailed in an out-of-court restructuring is just how it sounds: restructure the company's debt and cash flow. So what happens is the company has a X amount of money available to to pay its creditors, vendors, etc. The use of that money becomes important because we just discussed A, B, and C type creditors, vendors. Well, the most important is to take care of the A's. So all of the money goes there. So what an out-of-court restructuring does is it says to those who are not getting paid that we need some help from you, help in the form of being patient to get paid. So the 13-week cash flow, which we discussed, then includes this restructuring of A, B, and C.